I feel like when most people tell me about how they got into video games or anime or whatever other nerd fandom they inhabit, they usually pick it up through some form of cultural osmosis, usually via the internet. But I'm a bit different. Most of my nerd habits started exceedingly young and were inherited because I got the cool parents. On my mom's side, the hobbies I inherited were literature and anime, the latter of which she discovered and fell in love with right alongside me. Hell, she even made this awesome Halloween costume for me from scratch when I was a kid. And on my dad's side, the main things I inherited were comic books, D&D, and video games. And while that mostly translated to me spending a lot of time watching the Wildcats animated series and probably exasperating my dad's tabletop friends as the littlest magic missiling sorcerer, it also meant that I played a lot of Doom. The story of how people first found Doom is usually delivered with a tone of whispered awe about how naughty the game was and how their parents wouldn't let them buy it, so they stole away to the one friend who did own a copy and partook of the forbidden, gory fruit. That was not how I was introduced to Doom. It was just another game floating around my household, one that my dad had already played into the ground. He knew every secret, beat every par, and had long since moved on to other games. But now this little floppy disk was falling into my hands, years after it had become a worldwide phenomenon. And Doom achieved that worldwide phenom status for a lot of good reasons. There's a ton that's already been said about why this game is so great. People rave about the game's enemy design and how just a few different enemy types could be mixed and matched with different arenas to create a wide variety of challenges, and about its massive pile of weapons, which each have their own uses and widen the possibility space even further. And its still running modding scene, and the little tricks you can learn to manipulate monsters into fighting each other, and on and on and on. But as an 8-year-old plowing through Hell's halls with golden eyes aglow with the power of cheat codes, I didn't really have any frame of reference to understand or appreciate just what a marvel this game's systems were. The shooty bits were entertaining, sure, but what kept me coming back was Doom's atmosphere. And I'm not talking about all the blood and guts so absurdly abstracted by pixelation as to almost not even register as such. I'm talking about Doom's labyrinthine layouts and its evocative soundscape. I have an infamously bad memory, so most of my childhood is a pretty hazy blur, but I'm never gonna forget my first meeting with the Cyber Demon. The level starts by dropping you into a small bunker and tells you to pick one of 4 doors, but whichever way you go, the door closes behind you and you're left huddling in this tiny room full of ammo that opens into a wide, expansive outdoor area, something that almost never happened in Doom. And outside, there were footsteps. Heavy, dreadful, mechanical footsteps, unlike anything I'd ever heard before. I'd woken something up, and it was slowly trying to find me. Few moments in a video game have ever come across as menacing as that first encounter was for 8-year-old me, and I can't think of another sound effect that more effectively heralded an enemy's first on-screen appearance. But it's also just one soundbite from an extremely memorable soundscape. Every single sound in this game, from the grunt of the lowliest zombie marine to the absolute crunch of a super shotgun in the sequel to even the sound of a door opening, are permanently seared into my brain in a way that almost nothing else is. And similarly, I can remember this warehouse with its labyrinth of boxes creating tons of blind corners for imps to hide behind. And I sure as hell remember this extended walk through the dark punctuated by pinkies that jump out at you from the gloom. Doom's level design is made for effect, not to answer to logic, and even being literally invincible didn't cut the game's tension for me as a child. And these spaces weren't just highly evocative mood setters, navigating them was fun in and of itself. Doom frequently threw multiple winding hallways at you all at once, and it often felt like literally anything could be at the end of them. Sometimes there'd be a key you needed, sometimes you'd walk face first into a monster closet with a neat gun at the back of it. The game made navigation fun by giving you these seemingly sprawling levels to explore, then rigged the whole thing with a now classic gallery of tricks. Secret treasure was always hidden behind fake walls, and every level was riddled with booby traps, with monster closets opening as soon as you picked up keys, and even the occasional environmental obstacle that threatened to crush you. Heck, sometimes you could even walk into an exit to finish the level, only to find out it's just another trap, and other times you walked into a secret passage expecting some sick loot, only to get a million demons instead. This game even had secret bonus levels you could find. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, Doom was my first dungeon crawler? And a damn good one at that. And for a solid decade, that was how Doom remained in my memory. It was a ridiculously over-adrenalized demon-punching romp where you ran 1,000,000 miles an hour and shotgunned hundreds of demons. But it was also this moody, atmospheric dungeon crawl that could constantly surprise and terrify you. And more than any mechanical genius, that was what hooked me as a kid. And it's why Doom is literally the only game I make sure that I go back and replay once every year or two. But that's not the only reason I constantly go back, because like all trends, shooters inevitably moved on from the 90s school of design, and to be honest, there was this long period starting in the early 2010s where I didn't really like where they were going. Single-player campaigns were dwindling, and the genre was adopting aggressively lower and lower times to kill. There were still standout releases from time to time, but stop-and-pop corridor shooters became the face of the industry, and there just wasn't anything compelling about them. They're not bad games, but they're just
boring. Delete.
And as a result, I drifted away from one of my favorite genres. I spent my college years avoiding FPSs and started playing things like grand strategy games and roguelikes instead. The world of chest-high walls and campers instantly killing you from behind just didn't click with me. But obviously, you don't just stop loving a hobby, or even a specific genre like shooters, cold turkey. And because of that, Doom traveled through the decades with me, and along with it, I started exploring its cousins Quake and Hexen that I'd never really played as a kid, because there just wasn't anywhere else to go to get that feeling other than the past. But I still spent a good 5 years yearning for something to come out that would go against the popular trends and give me something I actually liked. Something that reminded me of that older age of shooters that I still loved and engaged with. And it finally came from almost the last place I expected it to, because in 2016, Doom delivered. Nobody thought that this was going to happen, least of all me, but Doom 2016 was a revelation. It spat in the face of everything almost any other shooter of the time stood for. No more hiding behind cover, no more hunkering around as a mere mortal that can't even jump, strafe fast, pack a ton of big guns, and get in there and tear something's head off. One of my favorite parts of this game was that one gun, and one gun only, had an iron sight to look down, and it was almost unusable in 90% of situations because everything was directly in your face. And the wildest part of it all, it actually worked. Like, I don't know if you remember the lead up to Doom 2016's release, but the whole glory kill system that the entire game was founded on looked incredibly shaky and dubious at first. Up until that point, execution animations tended to slow the action down, not speed it up. Hell, even in other games today, like Apex Legends, they're incredibly inefficient and only there to style on your opponents. What place could they possibly have in one of the poster boys for fast and relentless gameplay? But it turned out that not only could those animations be executed so quickly and seamlessly that you could hardly blink before you got control of your character again, they ended up being one of the smartest design decisions in the entire game. Because they were the foundation of a core loop that once again put mobility and aggression front and center and forced you into a headlong duel with your opponents. Honestly, I think I play faster and more aggressively in 2016 than I ever did in the original. But 2016 didn't ignore its dungeon delving pedigree either. It didn't do the greatest job marrying these two halves together, where often secret hunting and platforming sections ground the entire game to a halt, but the formula was all still there. Levels like Resource Ops were navigational challenges that invoked the original, while others like Foundry and Argent Facility were entirely open-ended altogether. And secret passages with loot were back on the menu too, sometimes even giving you guns earlier than you were supposed to get them. But most importantly, it also occasionally captured that tense dungeon crawling atmosphere from the original. Just like how the fight with the Cyber Demon was a moment that stuck out above all else to me in OG Doom, largely because of how it was introduced, 2016 also had a fight that I won't soon forget. About 2/3 into the campaign, you're in this two-tiered Thunderdome, complete with portals that wrap around and spit you out to the opposite side. Clearing this room is the final hurdle to beat this particular level, and suitably, it's pretty much the biggest fight the game's thrown at you so far. Cacodemons, Revenants, a half-dozen Mancubi, Hell Knights, they throw the kitchen sink at you over the course of multiple waves of enemies that just keep flooding into the room as fast as you can put them down. But after like a 5-minute long, high-octane gunfight, you finally finish mopping them up. All that's left is to collect some ammo, hit the elevator button, and go to the next level. Time to decompress.
Demonic presence at unsafe levels. Lockdown in effect.
This moment isn't great because of some mechanical master stroke. It's not a particularly difficult or engaging fight. You just got finished with that. On the contrary, it takes like 5 seconds if you know what you're doing, and it's not even the first time you fight 2 Barons of Hell at once. It's practically a glorified jump scare. But you know what? It's a damn memorable one. Up until that point, you've been hearing that line about demonic activity for hours, but it usually comes after you've woken up a big hive of nastiness. And then all of a sudden, the same line gets recontextualized in an entirely empty room, and you only get about half a second to realize why before the metal slams back on and the obvious reason teleports in 5 feet away from you and starts trying to beat your face in. It's an ambush worthy of old school Doom, catching you just when you thought you were safe and literally hitting the exit button. What really makes this moment so memorable was what Doom 2016 captured best of all: tone. Because it turns out mechanical purity wasn't what was important. How Doom 2016 made you feel the same way as the original was. It leaned hard into the over-adrenalized demon-punching side of its pedigree, but it didn't entirely forget about the moody, atmospheric dungeon crawling either. It still surprised you just like the original did, but this time it did it in other, in-your-face, blood-pumping ways. And above all, that's what stuck with me about Doom, from the start all the way till today. The evocative soundscapes, the navigational challenges, and the blood-pumping thrills of the modern reboot. In both cases, I came for the incredible gameplay these games are known for, but after I've ripped and torn, after it actually is all done, that aesthetic is what stuck with me, and is going to be there forever, seared into my mind, echoing. Hey guys, so if you missed my video yesterday, this is the start of a new series where I write love letters to the games that have defined my taste as a player and as a critic. But you can directly influence how regular a series this becomes. I've just launched a Patreon page for First 5, where you can go to financially support the channel and help it grow until I can work full time. But more importantly, every $200 a month milestone I hit on Patreon, I'm gonna start working on another video in this series. So if you liked what you saw and want more, you know exactly how to get it. But I hope you enjoyed this very first rendition of Games That Defined Me. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next time.